from Primera Iglesia Bautista.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor, por favor.
Gracias. Gracias por la invitación. Amado Padre, en esta tarde te agradecemos de todo corazón por la bendición grande de estar en este lugar. Pedimos, oh Dios, que tú nos bendigas con tu presencia, des guía y dirección, sabiduría de lo alto. Bendigas tú, Señor, esta reunión. Bendigas al mayor de esta ciudad que tú lo has puesto para dirigir a este concilio y a cada persona que está aquí. Que mi Dios, en este día podamos sentir tu presencia, podamos recibir de ti guía y dirección, sabiduría tuya para resolver cada problema que se presente en nuestra ciudad. Pedimos, mi Dios, bendición para este lugar, para esta ciudad, para este estado, para nuestra nación, rogando, Padre Celestial, que tú bendigas este gobierno y lo uses de una manera especial para honra y gloria tuya. Te agradezco de todo corazón y pido una bendición especial para cada uno de los que estamos aquí, rogando que tú quedes, mi Dios, en nuestros corazones. En el nombre de Jesús oramos, mi Dios. Amén.
Amén.
Gracias.
Un momentito, pastor, por favor.
Sí.
Si nos haga el favor de comunicar con nosotros un poquito de su ministerio y de su tiempo en su iglesia.
Yo agradezco a Dios por este tiempo de estar sirviendo aquí en Douglas. Tengo 34 años en esta área. Empecé trabajando en lo que era la iglesia Sunnyside. Trabajé en la calle 4 y D, lo que es la iglesia Bautista Amistad. Después de ahí fui a trabajar a la iglesia Sunnyside y ahorita estoy trabajando en lo que es la primera iglesia Bautista.
¿Y dónde dónde está?
Esto está localizado en la calle 13 y Carmelita. Dios me ha concedido la bendición de trabajar en esta ciudad, a la cual vine por un día y tengo 34 años. Yo creo que aquí nos vamos a quedar. Ha sido de mucha bendición trabajar aquí en Douglas y trabajar al otro lado. Gracias a Dios por la bendición grande que nos ha dado de servir a mi familia, la cual, bueno, amamos esta ciudad. Estamos haciendo lo mejor por servir, por ayudar, por dejar una buena imagen de nuestra familia en este lugar.
Pues muchas gracias, pastor, por sus esfuerzos para Douglas y aquí tiene su casa siempre.
Mi oración es por todos ustedes, que Dios los bendiga. Gracias. Con permiso.
Gracias.
In case you missed any of that, one of the exciting things that he said was that he actually came to Douglas for one day, and it's been 34 years since he's been here because he loves this community so much. Move on to item number 4. Roll call, please.
Mayor Donald Hewish,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales, Councilmember Mitch Lindemann,
Here.
Councilmember Dania Acosta, present. Councilmember Ray Shelton,
Present.
Councilmember Michael Valdenegro,
Present.
Councilmember Jose Grijalva,
Here.
and Councilmember Grijalva, can you please provide with your password?
W66921,
Thank you, and what is your location?
Tucson, Arizona.
And is anyone else with you?
No.
Thank you. Interim City Manager, City Treasurer Luis Pedrosa,
Present.
City Attorney Dennis Fitzgibbons.
Here.
Mr. Reyna, for the record, Mayor Pro Tempore Margaret Morales is excused.
Thank you very much. Item number 5, persons wishing to address the council in writing or verbally on any item not on the agenda. Ms. Andrade, do we have anything?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any public participation requests.
Thank you. Item number 6, discussion decision on approval of consent agenda items. And part of this consent agenda items lists many people that are being appointed and reappointed to various boards and commissions, committees here in the city. I'm going to read everybody's name. We'll take a vote, and then we'll invite you up, if you're here, to receive the certificate of appointment. And if you wouldn't mind pausing for a minute so we can have a group picture. Item 6A of the consent agenda is expenditures for the month of May 2021 totaling $2,375,248.32. B, meeting minutes for April 28th, 29th, and May 12, 2021. Item C, Airport Authority Board appointment of Ms. Donna Henderson. Board of Adjustment appointment of Ms. Susan Kramer, Ms. Laura Neches, and Mr. Arturo Torres. Program Coordinating Committee appointment of Ms. Myra Galindo. All appointments are effective July 1, 2021. Item D, Board of Adjustments reappointment of Mr. Joe Moran and Mr. Patrick Sheridan. Douglas Community Housing Corporation reappointment of Ms. Desiree Rice and Ms. Denise Machado. Douglas Public Facility Municipal Property Corporation Golf Course reappointments, Mr. Ruben Robles, Mr. Kevin Alvarado, Mr. James Selchow. Industrial Development Authority Board reappointment of Mr. Patrick Sheridan and Ms. Ida Pedrego. Program Coordinating Committee reappointment of Ms. Zenia Gonzalez, Ms. Pavel Escalante, Mr. Mario Merino, and Ms. Ana Luna. Personnel Appeals Board reappointment of Ms. Vicky Merritt. Transit Advisory Committee reappointment of Ms. Linda Jones, Mr. Gary Clark, Mr. Luis Pedrosa, Ms. Keita Williams, and Ms. Connie Gastello. All reappointments effective July 1, 2021. And item E of the consent agenda, Southwest Valley Constructors Company Land Lease Agreement Amendment. May I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Acosta?
I move that council approve consent agenda items as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Acosta, second by Mr. Valdereno to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
and Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries. So anybody that's been appointed or reappointed, if you'd like to come forward, we'd love to take a picture with you along with presenting you with your certificate of appointment. Is there anyone here?
Mr. Moran?
Mr. Moran, see there he is.
Well, I'm here after so many years. Well, we'll try it again and see what happens.
Well, hopefully we'll have reason to have you, but if you would come forward, Mr. Moran, we'd like to.
And Ms. Gonzalez as well.
Ms. Gonzalez, you're gonna have to also come.
At least, Mayor, at least you, what a great friend.
Thank you.
Luis Pedrosa, too?
Oh, Luis.
You
So
couldn't
he's right over
hide.
here on
The
the
shirt
side.
didn't go
Yes,
long.
Which way? Aquí para allá.
Oh, para allá.
Transit Authority.
Where did she go? What happened to Nubia?
It's coming.
My picture taker. And Mr. Moran, we're looking for another
Where are they
spot for
coming?
you also.
I want that one. Okay, I really want that.
Trustee cell phone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Item number 7, discussion decision on approval of first reading of ordinance number 21-1132, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the sale, execution, and delivery of pledged revenue obligation taxable series 2021, evidencing a proportionate interest of the owners thereof in a purchase agreement, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of necessary agreements, instruments, and documents related to the sale, execution, and delivery of such obligations. 3, adopting post-issuance continuing disclosure compliance procedures in connection with issuance of obligations of the city and a contingency reserve fund policy. 4, delegating authority to the mayor and the city manager of the city to determine certain matters and terms with respect to the foregoing. And 5, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this ordinance, establishing severability of components of ordinance, and 6, declaring an emergency. Mr. Pedrosa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. Before you is the what we call a pledge revenue obligation for our PSPRS retirement system. We've gone through this process for more than a year now and learned many different things along the way. Through the process, we know that we found out that this is the right solution for the city at this time. What this will address is, as we all know, and every budget year we hear about it, is the unfunded liability for our PSPRS pension for police and fire. We were around 30% funded at this time. The idea with this pledged revenue obligation is to fully fund our plans, both for police and fire, at or near 100%. That number is projected to be at $38.87 million at this time. We are also proposing to fund a $4 million contingency reserve fund that, as was mentioned, there is a policy that is also part of this ordinance for the proper use of that funding. Ultimately, the decision to go out for long-term debt for this type of issue basically came down to saving of taxpayer dollars. We realize that it is a large commitment to take on, 18 years of debt service, but within our due diligence, we found out that through this process, we will save around $13 million to the taxpayers, and therefore eluding any future tax hikes or other revenue increases that we would need to seek out in order to address the looming cost that's ahead of us. Not only is it it's the right solution, but it's the right time because of the market conditions. We also went through the rating process, which was, to me, very surprisingly in a good way, that the city was able to rate with both rating agencies of S&P and Fitch, very well-known rating agencies, to rate us at a AA-. Bodes very well to the financial management that the city has done over at least the past 6 years, where we were rated at an A. So we increased 2 levels to get here. So basically, that's our credit rating. It tells us how responsible we will be to paying these money back to the investors that will be doing this. As I mentioned, these are not until we sell the bonds tomorrow, which is after hopefully receiving the authorization today, we will begin the pricing of the bonds, and that's where investors will seek out to buy our bonds and what kind of price we get for the bonds. Again, we are very well positioned to get a good price for them based on, again, market conditions, our rating, all those factors just aligning for us. I also want to mention that back to the contingency reserve fund, we know that this system is volatile and can very well, based on future years and market conditions changing, this could very well be less than 100% funded in 1 year. So therefore, that's what we planned ahead. We put ourselves in a good position and funded a nice contingency reserve fund that will allow us to manage this plan further so that we don't get those unexpected costs that would affect us in the future. Finally, I just want to stress just the importance and basically commend the council for their commitment and understanding of what this means to the city and the way we're looking towards the future as far as taking care of ourselves financially for the years to come. So with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's get a motion on the floor first. May I have a motion to approve the placement?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Shelton.
I move that the mayor and council approve the placement of ordinance number 21-1132 on its first reading by number and title only and declaring it an emergency.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Lindeman to place ordinance number 21-1132 on first reading by number and title only and declaring an emergency. Discussion, questions?
Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Lindeman.
I believe that this is the appropriate action at this time to take care of our unfunded liabilities, and I believe that's almost the only move that we can make since it's such a great hunk of money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman.
Mr. Mayor?
Let me see what we got. We lose them?
No.
Well, we're gonna, this is Acosta, please.
I just wanted to congratulate and thank Mr. Pedrosa as being, an essential part of the city's credit rating. It sounds like, we all know, living in our community, that we've gone, we've had a lot of city issues, of city business that needs to be addressed and lacking money, but Mr. Pedrosa has always been very responsible and just a good steward of that money. So with that, it shows with our credit rating, and just like to thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Grijalva.
I want to echo what my colleagues also said, and like Mr. Lindeman said, this is the best option because it doesn't put any burden on the taxpayers as any other route would. So again, to Mrs. Acosta's point, thank you to Mr. Pedrosa because he worked very hard to find the best solution where it wouldn't be a burden to the city or our taxpayers. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindeman,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
In orders of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the sale, execution, and delivery of pledged revenue obligations taxable Series 2021 evidencing a proportionate interest of the owners thereof in a purchase agreement, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of necessary agreements, instruments, and documents related to the sale, execution, and delivery of such obligations, adopting post-issuance continuing disclosure compliance procedures in connection with issuance of obligations of the city and a contingency reserve fund policy, delegating authority to the mayor and the city manager of the city to determine certain matters and terms with respect to the foregoing, authorizing the taking of all other actions as necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this ordinance, establishing severability of components of ordinance and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the first reading?
I move, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Schultz.
I move that the mayor and council approve the first reading of ordinance number 21-1132 and to place it on secondary reading by number and title only and declaring it an emergency.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Lindeman to approve the first reading of ordinance number 21-1132 and place it on second reading by number and title only and declaring an emergency. Any other discussion or come to mind? Hearing none, roll call please.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
and Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the sale, execution, and delivery of pledged revenue obligations, taxable series 2021, evidencing a proportionate interest of the owners thereof in a purchase agreement, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of necessary agreements, instruments, and documents related to the sale, execution, and delivery of such obligations, adopting post-issuance continuing disclosure compliance procedures in connection with issuance of obligations of the city and a contingency reserve fund policy, delegating authority to the mayor and the city manager of the city to determine certain matters in terms with respect to the foregoing, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this ordinance, establishing severability of components of ordinance and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the second reading?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Shelton.
I move that the mayor and council approve the second reading of ordinance number 21-1132 and to place it on the third reading by number and title only and declaring it an emergency.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Lindeman to approve the second reading of ordinance number 21-1132 and to place it on third reading by number and title only and declaring an emergency. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I think
please.
Just for the public's sake, why we probably should explain why we're approving it by emergency.
Please.
This type of transaction needs to happen on a timely basis. We want to take advantage of the markets that are in place and follow the necessary procedures. So it's essential that we get this passed here tonight and continue with that process. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the sale, execution, and delivery of pledged revenue obligations, taxable series 2021, evidencing a proportionate interest of the owners thereof in a purchase agreement, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of necessary agreements, instruments, and documents related to the sale, execution, and delivery of such obligations, adopting post-issuance continuing disclosure compliance procedures in connection with the issuance of obligations of the city and a contingency reserve fund policy, delegating authority to the mayor and the city manager of the city to determine certain matters and terms with respect to the foregoing, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this ordinance, establishing severability of components of ordinance and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the third reading.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the mayor and council approve the third reading of ordinance number 21-1132 by number and title only and declaring it an emergency.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Lindeman to approve the third reading of ordinance number 21-1132 by number and title only and declaring an emergency. Any discussion? By way of a bit of information, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Pedrosa, when we first started this process, there was roughly 3 entities, government entities involved in doing this process. I believe there's been over 15 that have actually entered the market and probably close to 40 that are looking at this same solution. So just by way of information to everyone. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Councilmember Acosta?
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro?
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva?
Yes.
Councilmember Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the sale, execution, and delivery of pledged revenue obligations taxable series 2021, evidencing a proportionate interest of the owners thereof in a purchase agreement, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of necessary agreements, instruments, and documents related to the sale, execution, and delivery of such obligations, adopting post-issuance continuing disclosure compliance procedures in connection with the issuance of obligations of the city, and a contingency reserve fund policy, delegating authority to the mayor and the city manager of the city to determine certain matters and terms with respect to the foregoing, authorizing the taking of all other actions necessary to the consummation of the transactions contemplated by this ordinance, establishing severability of components of ordinance and declaring an emergency.
Thank you very much. Item number 8, discussion decision on approval of first reading of ordinance number 21-1133, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, to undertake a minor departmental reorganization affecting leisure services and public works departments and amending the following ordinances: number 631, 673, 728, 848, 04-871, 09-954, 13-1027, 18-1086, 19-1103, and 19-1108, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof. Mr. Pedrosa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned, we are seeking a minor reorganization of the Public Works and Leisure Services departments. First, we're looking at the Public Works Director / City Engineer position. We've been trying to fill that position since 2019 with no success. Hiring engineers is a nationwide problem for municipalities. It is hard to compete with the private industry. We are looking to remove the city engineer component from the Public Works Director / City Engineer position, basically leaving the position only as a Public Works Director. We would be dropping the range of 37 down to 35 on the salary scale. The engineer we will need to contract out engineering services for when as needed. That is the drawback of basically this reclassification. But we realize that going more than 2 years without hiring and having that leadership position is really crucial for us, and we definitely need to adjust in order for us to be able to get some relief there. There's other reclassifications within the Public Works Department, the Maintenance Tech 1 position, which is a range 14 in the Streets Department. And it basically being reclassified to Public Works Streets Equipment Operator 2 to a range 15. This change will continue to provide backup to the Maintenance Tech 4 while being able to operate equipment for the street project. So we're basically giving this position a dual role that can mirror some of the existing processes that we have while also being useful in operating equipment. We're also looking to add 3 Equipment Operator 1 positions to the street division. These are range 14 positions. We currently have funded 4 labor positions that are limited status. We see it beneficial to bring these positions up to have them require a commercial driver's license to be able to operate the heavy equipment and machinery. And this is basically something that's necessary at this time for the streets division. We also are proposing to eliminate 3 Equipment Operator 1 positions in the Sanitation Division. With the change to the automated pickup garbage service, we no longer need that second driver. We don't need that second driver in that truck. We only need the one individual. We are not laying off any people. These positions have become vacant through attrition over the past few years as we went automated. So we are reorganizing ourselves to reflect an automated pickup department. On the leisure services side, we have another position that we've been unsuccessful in filling. That is the recreation and aquatic supervisor. It's been very difficult to find the experience in one individual on both the aquatics and recreation side. You usually get one or the other. The proposal is to reclassify that position. We're basically going to be creating 2 coordinator positions, one for aquatic and one for recreation. The range would go from 20 to those coordinator positions being range 16s. And basically what we have is the ability to hire within a specialized section, not necessarily the person having 2. We will also reclassify the assistant aquatic supervisor position, which is a range 14, basically doing away with that position and getting in the coordinator. So these positions there is no financial impact to the city. We are shuffling the cards per se to position ourselves to either build ourselves up within existing talent or hire somebody that can fulfill those roles in a better way. Lastly, we're taking the opportunity to change the department's name for Leisure Services Department back to Parks and Recreation Department. We found that this change allows the community to easily identify which areas are covered under that department. So we're always been known like that, so we want to invoke that name back into that department. That's it, Mayor. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pedrosa. The Leisure Services Department, everybody thought it was the city council. It just leisured around all the time. So that's why it's good that we change that name. May I have a motion to approve the placement of the ordinance?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Costa.
I move that mayor and council approve the placement of ordinance number 21-1133 on its first reading by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Costa, second by Mr. Baldenegro to approve the placement of ordinance number 21-1133 on its first reading by number and title only. Questions, discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Lindeman.
does that mean that we get to open up our own TV show now?
There we go. That increase our revenue. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, to undertake a minor departmental reorganization affecting mutual services and public works departments and amending the following ordinances: 631, 673, 728, 848, 04-871, 09-954, 13-1027, 18-1086, 19-1103, and 19-1108, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the first reading?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Acosta?
I move that the mayor and council approve the first reading of ordinance number 21-1133 and to place it on second reading by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Acosta, second by Mr. Valdenegro to approve the first reading of ordinance number 21-1133 and to place it on second reading by number and title only. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, to undertake a minor departmental reorganization affecting leisure services and public works department and amending the following ordinances: 631, 673, 728, 848, 04-871, 09-954, 13-1027, 18-1086, 19-1103, and 19-1108, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Item number 9, discussion decision on approval of first reading of ordinance number 21-1134, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, reassigning duties of the design review board to the Board of Adjustments and removing the design review board from the Douglas Municipal Code by amending ordinance number 352, 659, 702, 04-862, 14-1034, and 20-1127 as to Article 11 of the zoning regulations, and amending ordinance number 703 and 04862 as to Article 16 of the zoning regulations, establishing severability of components of the ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof. Mr. Gardner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is a mild adjustment to consolidate several existing boards and committees. The Design Review Board, as it currently exists for the sole purpose of reviewing and hearing appeals of staff's interpretation of design standards in the historic district. This has not been done for several years. Whereas the Board of Adjustment has a broader scope and also hears any other appeal to staff's zoning decisions, staff feels it's appropriate to eliminate the Board of the Design Review Board and wrap all of those functions into the existing Board of Adjustments, which is well suited to handle any such appeals.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the placement?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Acosta.
I move that mayor and council approve the placement of ordinance number 21-1134 on its first reading by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Acosta, second by Mr. Shelton, to approve the placement of ordinance number 21-1134 on its first reading by number and title only. Questions, discussion?
Mayor.
Yes,
Mr.
please,
Mayor.
Mr. Lindemann. Hold on, Mr. Grijalva. Mr. Lindemann is going to go first.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, instead of the Board of Adjustments, should this be better placed with the Planning and Zoning?
Planning and Zoning Commission hears, they operate in a legislative role, legislative advisory role, since their decisions for the most part move to the City Council, whereas the Board of Adjustment operates in a quasi-judicial role, the same way that the Design Review Board here operated. They hear questions of fact and make interpretations of fact as opposed to legislative decisions. So one of the existing roles of the Board of Adjustment is to hear appeals of zoning inspectors' decisions, which is essentially myself. If I think the zoning regulations say one thing and a citizen disagrees, they would take that to the Board of Adjustments in that quasi-judicial hearing. What the Design Review Board would do is staff would decide that the Historic District design guidelines say one thing, and if someone disagreed with that, would go to the Design Review Board. So it's really exactly the same process through a quasi-judicial board through an argument of fact and interpretation, whereas the Planning and Zoning Commission would hear things of a broader legislative scope, like whether or not a particular use is appropriate in a particular location. I hope that answers your question.
Let me just pose a hypothetical, if I may.
Please.
If there was a question in the historic district that went to the Board of Adjustments, what would be the appeal process for that?
The appeal process to the Board of Adjustments, like the Design Review Board, would be through the Superior Court process, because it, again, is a quasi-judicial question of fact rather than a legislative, subjective interpretation.
I'm just wondering, is that the route we want to go for, say, I want to paint my house and I happen to live in the historic district? Is that the route we want to go to the Superior Court?
Things like colors are not regulated in the Historic District. It primarily applies to new commercial construction. Neither board has met in a number of years. And staff is always going to attempt to work with an applicant. And if an applicant staff cannot come to an acceptable solution, again, that's where the Board of Adjustments would be able to come in. And again, in my experience, generally once folks feel they've been heard by a Board of Adjustment or a Planning Commission or any similar body, it's very rare for them to progress to the next step. And it would be an egregious error of fact before it would end up to court, to that level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva.
Oh, I just wanted to reaffirm what Mr. Gardner said. I'm part of the Design Review Board, and I'm almost going to be 4 years in, and we haven't done anything. So I trust Mr. Gardner and where the responsibilities are going. So I just wanted to point that out, that this isn't just a decision that, let's just take the power away from a certain group. We have not met, and it's better the way that staff wants to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grau. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, reassigning duties of the Design Review Board to the Board of Adjustments and removing the Design Review Board from the Douglas Municipal Code by amending ordinance number 352-659-702, 04-862, 14-1034, and 20-1127 as to Article 11 of the zoning regulations, and amending ordinance number 703 and 048-862 as to Article 16 of the zoning regulations, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. May I have a motion regarding the first reading?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mrs. Acosta.
I move that Mayor and Council approve the first reading of ordinance number 21-1134 and to place it on the second reading by number and title only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Acosta, second by Mr. Shelton to approve the first reading of ordinance number 21-1134 and to place it on second reading by number and title only. Any other questions or discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, please.
I just want for the record to show that I am in favor of consolidating the boards, especially if they're not active. And my philosophy has always been that if you ask members of Unity to spend their time doing something for the city, it has to be worthwhile. I do have a question though. This is certainly just the first reading, but I'll think about where the better placement would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. You brought up some very valid points, and we appreciate that, and thank you very much. Any other comments, discussion?
Yes.
Question? Yes, Mr. Shelton.
With the revitalization of downtown and some things that are going to be happening, the board might have to meet in some areas in the near future. So that's good to have just one board. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Anyone else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, reassigning duties of the Design Review Board to the Board of Adjustments and removing the Design Review Board from the Douglas Municipal Code by amending ordinance number 352, 659, 702, 04-862, 14-1034, and 20-1127, as to Article 11 of the zoning regulations and amending ordinance number 703 and 04-862 as to Article 16 of the zoning regulations, establishing severability of components of ordinance and establishing an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Item number 10, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 21-1460. A resolution of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the acceptance of a grant for the library in the amount of $4,000 from the Arizona State Library and Public Records for developing of collections and programs, CAP, in support of the library's Business Resource Center for the benefit of the community. Ms. White?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The resolution before you, I ask that you accept a $4,000 grant from the Arizona State Library for development of collections and programs in support of the library's Business Resource Center. This CAP grant will be used to enhance collections and programs that will assist Douglas residents who now are or are interested in becoming business owners and entrepreneurs, whether they're home-based, based in the business district, whether they're online, or whether they're on site.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. White. May I have a motion to approve, to consider the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Mayor and Council approve resolution number 21-1460.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton, second by Mr. Valdenegro, to approve resolution number 21-1460. Questions, comments, discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Linder.
I wanted to say that this is a very good enhancement for our library, and I'm sure that it'll get a lot of usage, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linderman. Mr. Shelton?
Yes, and thank you for all your work. Who wrote the grant?
I did.
Okay, congratulations. We need to have many more grants for many more things in our city, and hopefully be a lot more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Anyone else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 11, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 21-1461. A resolution of the Mayor and Council of the City of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the acceptance of a grant for the library in the amount of $6,939.60 from the Rural Activation and Innovation Network, RAIN, for development of a STEM story walk in 10th Street Park for the benefit of the community. Ms. White?
Thank you. This resolution asks that you accept the $6,939.60 from the Rural Activation and Innovation Network to install a 20-station science, technology, engineering, and math STEM story walk pathway in 10th Street Park.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to consider the resolution?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please, Mr. Valdenegro.
I move that the Mayor and Council approve resolution number 21-1461.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valdenegro, second by Mr. Shelton to approve resolution number 21-1461. Discussion, comments, questions?
Once again, did you write this grant?
This was a combined effort with Mr. Furnett in the grants office and the library staff.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? There will be a test on once you go through this STEM walk for the council members after they're done to see if we pass.
You'll pass.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Acosta?
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro?
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva? Councilmember Grijalva?
Jose?
Are you with us, Mr. Grijalva?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilmember Lindemann?
Hello?
Yes.
Ask him again.
Councilmember Grijalva?
Yes.
This will be to approve resolution number 21-1461.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 12, discussion decision on approval of resolution number 21-1462. A resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, approving the acceptance of a grant for the library in the amount of $4,000 from the Arizona State Library and Public Records for continuation of the mobile hotspot lending program for the benefit of the community. Ms. White?
Yes, this resolution asks that you accept a $4,000 grant from the Arizona State Library to be used for continuation of the library's hotspot lending program. Since the library's initial selection in fall 2017 to participate in the Arizona State Library's pilot hotspot lending project to help bridge the internet service gap, the library has received a total of 6 hotspot grants totaling $24,571.42 to continue offering the hotspot lending program to Douglas residents. And those residents have borrowed hotspots over 2,150 times since the program began.
Fantastic. May I have a motion for the resolution?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Acosta?
I move that mayor and council approve resolution number 21-1462.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Acosta, second by Mr. Valdenegro to approve resolution number 21-1462. Question, discussion? Mr. Shelton?
Thumbs up. Way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm truly amazed that many people participated. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But it also shows our lack of broadband throughout our city.
So far.
So it's fantastic that we're able to provide some of that service to be able to bridge that gap till we get to the point of having that broadband throughout our city. Any other discussion or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Shelton?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro?
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva?
Yes.
Councilmember Lindemann?
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, motion carries. Item number 13, presentation, discussion, decision on approval of resolution number 21-1463, a resolution of the mayor and council of the city of Douglas, Cochise County, Arizona, adopting the tentative estimates of the amount required for the public expense of the city of Douglas for the fiscal year 2021-2022, adopting a tentative budget, setting forth the receipts and expenditures, the amount proposed to be raised by various means, and giving notice of the time for taxpayers hearing on the final budget adoption. Mr. Pedrosa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Before you is our 2021-2022 tentative budget adoption. As a reminder, what we do is, if approved, we set the ceiling for our spending for the next fiscal year. and we will move forward with a final adoption in July. I wanted to bring forward some of the slides that you may have already seen, the work session that we conducted with the Finance Committee, and just as a refresher to the Mayor and Council and the public as to what this budget is mainly comprised of. As we all know, we were alerted that we were going to receive $4.3 million in ARPA funds from the federal government due to the COVID-19 response. Our plan is to apply those funds towards public safety salaries. We know we are still working on confirmation on the proper use of funding, but that until we get that confirmation, we plan on utilizing that funding towards public safety. With that in mind, the 4.3 will free up funding elsewhere to handle one-time capital expenditures. And just as a very quick summary, the recommendation includes investment in our streets equipment infrastructure, mainly funding equipment that can get us in better shape to do more improvements out there on streets. We're looking to invest about $1 million in equipment. Community projects total about $1.1 million. We'll go through those shortly. Public safety, police, fire, and EMS, $829,000. $300,000 towards our downtown revitalization. This is actual construction monies. We will be finalizing the study that we already funded this fiscal year, and that's set to finish sometime towards the end of this year. Also setting aside some money for the port of entry water and sewer infrastructure design component, about $500,000 there. We are also in talks with collaboration with other agencies to be able to fund this project. That includes grants, that includes the county. So we are definitely looking to or seeking out those partnerships as well. Other major investments with other existing sources of funding, water infrastructure, we're investing about $2.2 million. $1.7 million of that is for a new well that we plan to do probably after the summer. And also investing just $500,000 towards our chip seal program. Again, $500,000 there. As you've already approved, we're also budgeting $40 million for the pledge revenue obligation that was just approved for our PSPRS pension obligation. $15.7 million of savings. It's about $13 million in net present value savings over an 18-year period. This is what our funding structure looks like in a nutshell. We're utilizing different sources of money to balance. As you can see, the general fund looks a little bit different than previous years with that $40 million. This is just one of those special occasions that we're typically around the $20 million range with the general fund, but with the $40 million pension obligation that we need to budget for, it put us up to $61 million. The enterprise funds are balanced except for $278,000 carried over, and $674,000 that we're using in existing fund balance to fund some of these projects. The CIP, we're also balanced again with the 4.3, but we're also carrying over existing funding from this year to next year for projects that weren't finalized. That's $717,592. Transit fund balance, again, $89,498 for some capital projects there as well within its existing fund balance. HERF, same thing, using $258,174 in fund balance to balance that fund, and that's going towards street projects. Our debt service fund is balanced. Housing requires a $31,838 subsidy from the general fund to balance. Airport, $33,078, and golf course, $180,000 subsidy to be balanced. We are also funding outside requests from community projects. The Wall of Faces requested $1,000, and that's to take care of rent and supplies to keep their museum going. Dark, $13,000, which is for the cost of fuel for their Meals on Wheels program. And the Douglas Senior Citizens, $1,500 to pay for their holiday festivities for their seniors. We are recommending to fund all of these three in full. Again, breaking down our capital investment even further, about $296,000 on general government projects. One of those projects includes the City Hall, specifically the council chambers, making this a more of a multi-purpose room by removing the chairs that are currently fixed and moving to a more mobile type setting, making this a multi-purpose room and basically modernizing the room as well. There's some other facility requirements that we're also addressing there. Mentioned the downtown revitalization of $300,000, the POE design engineering for water and sewer for $500,000. The library is getting $25,000 for library improvements, about $41,000 for IT infrastructure, which includes computer replacement. Public safety, about $1.1 million. That included body-worn cameras for the police officers, vehicles for police, some printers as well that are needed to get us more modernized as to how we issue citations as opposed to handwriting those. On the fire side, we're recommending the cardiac monitors to be funded, as well as structural PPE for our firefighters. That's their second set that is needed in case their first set is down for whatever reason. We need to have that backup set for their protection. We're also funding some facility improvements, some gym equipment for the fire department, as well as some outfitting for the rescue truck that was donated to the city. Parks and Recreation, $891,500. That includes a new soccer turf field that will be retrofitted at A Street Park with existing tennis courts that are currently being underutilized. That'll save some money in not having to put a surface on it, as well as not having to light it since it's already lit. We're also looking to fund a master plan program, which is would cost us about $90,000, which will study our area to determine our recreational needs. We know we have them. We just need to some guidance and experts to allow us to present those opportunities that our public will mostly benefit from. So we definitely want to seek out community center needs, as well as pool, skate parks, those type of studies to be able to determine those needs. We've also set aside about $450,000 towards those recommendations from the master plan. Public Works is getting $591,653, and again, that is the water and sewer, as well as some vehicles and some facility maintenance, as well as setting money aside for finishing the warehouse at the Public Works barn that can house our inventory, as well as some offices there potentially. HERF, I mentioned $1.5 million, $500,000 in improvements, as well as $1 million in equipment. Transit, $337,148. That includes a transit facility site, the design portion of that, which is 80% grant funded, as well as some small cameras for our bus and our bus yard. Water and sewer, we mentioned the well. We also are budgeting, just to give us that budget capacity, we're budgeting an additional $3 million for the design of the water and wastewater to the POE. So we're building that budget capacity just in case we get those grants. Sanitation, $161,000. That's setting money aside for vehicles and trash cans for future use. The golf course is also getting money to carrying over some funding for the pump to be able to finish that, as well as the RV park electrical improvements, and to also take care of a shed that needs to be replaced. The airport is getting $118,000. That's $40,000 in grant match for a grant of $400,000 that we have been tentatively told that we will receive, and that's to complete the perimeter fencing around the airport. So we need $40,000 to match that grant. We're also carrying over the museum improvements, which is adding a bathroom and some air conditioning there, as well as approving a trailer. Overall, as you can see, we're investing about $11.1 million in total capital investment. On to our employees and our best assets for the city, what some of those highlights represent. Just so you know, departments have asked for new positions, increased funding and reclassifications. We weren't able to address the large majority within this budget program, but I will go over some of those different initiatives that we've been able to do. We were able to reclassify a labor position to equipment operator 1. That's one thing that was pending from prior budget years that we took the initiative to do this year. We're also funding the deputy city manager. It was funded for only 1 month or this current fiscal year. We're funding that in full for fiscal year 21-22. Parks worker and equipment mechanic 1 positions were only funded for 6 months this year. We are going to be funding them for the full year. Excuse me. Some of the changes that we did do on the personnel side were to increase the library specialist position from 30 hours to 40 hours, making that a full-time position. The person that was there before was comfortable with the 30 hours. Now we have somebody else, and we definitely could use those extra hours for the library. We also increased overtime in cemetery to a more realistic number from 5,000 to 7,000. And as you know, this is mostly to cover funerals on the weekends, which we charge for that, and we get that revenue back. Humane is another one that gets a lot of call-outs at all times of the day and throughout the week. So increase that from $1,500 to $3,500. We also increased the fire and EMS. I know we're still not to the level that we need to be, but we're hopefully slowly getting there from 50,000 to 60,000. The other initiative we want to do is to provide, again, a bonus to the employees sometime close to December. We want to calculate that based on the surplus that we expect to receive at the end of this fiscal year, and a portion of that is allocated towards bonuses, one-time bonuses for the employees towards the December month. We mentioned a few things that were pending from last presentation. Our health insurance was pending. Now we know that we're seeing a $50,000 increase. It's just the nature of the business, $50,000. So we made those adjustments. Risk liability insurance is still not in yet. We don't expect a huge increase either. We think we can, we'll be able to manage it and still balance the budget. Workers' comp pretty much stayed level. Final state share revenue, we know, we received from the league that those preliminary estimates are most likely going to be the final ones. I mentioned to you the ARPA coronavirus funding, that we're still looking for final guidance on that. One thing that got sprung to us lately was that we would need additional veterinary services for our humane to oversee our processes of administering medication. Dr. John is our vet who oversees that, and due to his an assessment to his work and his liability towards what he does for us, it was determined that we need his services or his oversight a little bit more than what we have right now. So that would be an additional $6,000 cost to us. So that would increase the humane budget by that much. We met with the IDA, and the IDA voted to help with Ramirez Advisors contract. We were proposing to fund $68,400 in full, but the IDA has stepped up to fund $20,400 of that contract, while the city will fund the balance, and the city will also be responsible for the travel expenses associated with that. On June 1st, we met with the Finance Committee to get their formal recommendation to the Mayor and Council, and the Finance Committee voted unanimously to approve the recommendation to the City Council as presented, with one caveat, to reclassify the $25,000 carryover for the Veterans Memorial Wall replica within the capital budget to be used for other one-time capital expenses. So we informed the Finance Committee that our vendor for the wall replica was not able to meet our purchasing policies and procedures. Therefore, we did not have a way to pursue the funding for the wall or the purchasing of the wall. Therefore, the Finance Committee decided to make that recommendation to reclassify those $25,000, not for anything specifically, but for one-time capital expense. Finally, what's next? What are the next steps here? We mentioned that today is the tentative adoption, setting that ceiling of spending. This is what we're only allowed to spend moving forward. July 14, we will formalize the process, have a public hearing, and formally adopt it as a final adopted budget for fiscal year 21-22. With that, Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions and go over any other details that the council wishes to go through.
Thank you, Mr. Pedrosa. Any questions or discussion on the budget?
Coming in from taxes and so forth, especially after the wall employees left.
Mr. Shelton, that's a good question. Our revenue has remained steady and very good, actually. Even as the Board of Wall contractors have, most of them have left. We've heard it's about 90% of them that have now left. Just this past month, we got our final numbers, and we were over last year by about $66,000. So we continue to exceed those projections, even through the border being partially closed as well. So we are doing fairly well.
Thank you. May I have a motion regarding the resolution? Mr. Valdenegro?
I move that Mayor and Council approve resolution number 21-1463.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Valdenegro, second by Mr. Shelton to approve resolution number 21-1463. Discussion, questions?
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Renderman, please.
I'd simply like to propose to the council that in lieu of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall that couldn't be met with all the various reasons, and I'll still pursue that as more on the private donation side. But I propose that we utilize some of that money for yet another destination to a point to augment our city and spend that money on the Raul Castro statue in Raul Castro Park. I think that's appropriate, that we honor one of our most famous sons, and that would be yet another part that people can go visit, and we'd have historical writings or plaques around. So I'd like to propose that.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments on this proposal or any other, or the budget as a whole? Hearing none, would you like to put that into a motion, Mr. Lindeman, or how would you like to approach
I
that?
don't know if we need a motion right now, we're just approving
Correct.
the, so
Because,
at a later date possibly.
exactly. Sounds good. Okay, roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody else have anything else? Mr. Villarreal, you're looking very inquisitive.
He's loving that.
No. No, Mayor.
Yes,
Again,
Mr.
I
Hall.
want to thank the finance. Oh, thank you. I'm lagging on the communication here, so if I speak over anybody, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I just wanted to thank the finance committee. They were very involved in these decisions, and I just want to thank them for being there. And again, I want to thank all my colleagues too for their input on the budget. It's been a rough year, but like Mr. Pedrosa said, it's been a very good year despite the pandemic and all that. So I want to thank the city staff and my colleagues for really pushing Douglas forward when we could have easily been pushed back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva, and thank you also to the Finance Committee of which you chair. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lindeman,
Yes.
Councilmember Acosta,
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton,
Yes.
Councilmember Valdenegro,
Yes.
Councilmember Grijalva,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all. Thank you for all the dedication to our staff. Item number 14, City Manager Reports, Mr. Pedrosa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Try to keep this brief. Just to update the public on our reopening process of city facilities and city programs. As we all have been aware, our vaccination rates keep going up as well as infections going down. So we do see that light at the end of the tunnel, and basically we are taking those steps to open up. As you can see today, masks are not required here at City Hall within all the different services. Other different departments operate in a different way, so we're still in the process of transitioning there. Fire at their places still require masks. Library is now open to the public. We were open by appointment only, so now we have programs. We are open at the library, and with masks being required, as well as social distancing and sanitization. Transit is the mask requirement is on the federal level. We must comply with that because it's a federal program. So you will see we will still be required to require masks within transit. Police recently reopened their lobby with also mask requirement as well as social distancing, but now it's open to the public. Parks and Rec, if most of us know that their programs are now active once again. We have swim classes, we have summer camp going on, We are also doing an Arts in the Park program. Our movie program is up and running. And we're also planning a 3-day 4th of July celebration. So we're off and running in Parks and, we're going to call it Parks and Recreation now, not Leisure Services. So we're definitely off and running and taking those safe, necessary steps and appropriate steps, I should say, at this time. Finally, Mayor, if I didn't get a chance to thank our team for the bond, just because it's been over a year that we work with these folks, and they've been so great to us. The Stifle team, Wells Fargo, and especially to Wedbush, who just guided us through this very complicated and navigated us through this very complicated process. So I want to thank that team, and we're not there yet. That we got a very busy day tomorrow to sell those bonds, put them out to market, but certainly we're almost there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pedrosa. Item number 15, informational items and reports from council and future agenda item requests. Mr. Grijalva, do you have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to thank staff, Mayor, for the new lights at the H Street Park. I tried to play with the young guns out there, and my niece killed me a few weeks ago, but everybody had to leave when the sun went down, and now they have new lights there. They can stay, hopefully not too late, but they're out playing more, giving them somewhere to go. So I want to thank the staff for that. I also want to thank staff and my colleagues. I haven't been very active there lately. As some of you know, my grandmother had a heart attack, and she had to have some stents put in and 2 arteries. And I'm still here in Tucson, so I want to thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers, and for being very, making this process, as far as, meetings and all that, very smooth. I've had to do Zoom. I couldn't be there for the finance meeting, but staff has been very caring on that, and also the community for their thoughts and prayers. So I want to thank you all, and hopefully I'll be there soon. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Grijalva. Anybody else from the council? I have one item. You may remember last month's meeting we discussed and approved the placement of a Wi-Fi small tower at the Little League field at Joe Kazi Park, and that's my home field, and I failed to mention the proper name of that park, and I apologize to the Gonzalez family. It's Ramon Monchi Gonzalez Little League Park, and I just wanted to make sure that I made mention of that, because Darren Monchi was even though I didn't play directly with him in every game, but he was still there for me and would coach me even though I wasn't on his team, and then had the opportunity a couple of years to be able to be coached by him in the All-Stars. And so, again, my apologies to the Gonzalez family, and again, Ramon Monchi Gonzalez Little League Field at Joe Kazi Park. Thank you. Item number 16, adjournment. Motion, please.
Mayor, I recommend we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shelton and second by Mrs. Acosta that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Thank you. We stand adjourned at 7:23.